It would be cool. We almost might get to see some international play, sort of, quote unquote.
I think that's really cool. I mean, you have debatably the most, one of the most talented teams in Europe, the North American flavor going into it. And I think as time goes on, we will see this more and more often of players, coaches swapping regions.
I mean, technically, last year we saw our first international transfer, right, with Iraqi Zoro playing on Gangstar Cerberus. It worked out really well for them, especially towards the end. We are ready for the draft, though. Let's kick things off for Rising Lotus up against Cyclone. This is game number 1 with Rising Lotus on side A.
All right, Lotus going to set the tempo, take that jewel. I almost just said weapon jewel. Take that weapon jewel right off the board.
And the crystal one's still available.
Yeah, she's still available. But nobody's going to pick her.
But, yeah, banning away the jewel against Cyclone, this is the kind of thing that, these pocket picks, like when Waldemar made those plays happen in week 1, like this is just now something that teams have to do. They have to ban jewel against Cyclone. And that opens up the draft so much.
I mean, Flash literally tweeted out, "Thanks EU for adding Jewel to our playbook." I think he was just talking about Waldemar, though. Like, it was really fantastic play from him. Cyclone, they're going to be picking up the Lyra. Rising Lotus get themselves Adagio. And now Vox is off the table, too. Might we see another carry ban? Because you don't necessarily want to give away, like, the Ringo if you can't pick up a Vox and something comparably strong.
We could potentially see that. My mind's wondering... Whoa. If Cyclone's going to go towards Koshka, it's going to be a Kestrel coming in here. I imagine that we'll see that come out of the jungle.
I don't know. It's tough to say when we're in Europe, but they have a North American coach, so I just don't know what to think anymore. We're in a very nebulous place right now.
I mean, we can keep in mind that Waldemar was one of the top Kestrel players if we look back, into last season. And he was doing some pretty unique things, like a weapon path and then switch into Crystal.
That's true. That was actually one of the things I thought was coolest about his play back then. Rising Lotus, though, they got 2 more picks now to answer the Lyra and the Kestrel. Fortress going to be one of them. I think we can't be too surprised by that. Ringo as well, locked in. Okay, it's going to be the lane for the Kestrel.
There's that North American influence.
That is, but, I mean, they still got to make it work, right? I mean, the Koshka... Europe-wise, has a very rough win rate.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the rough win rate comes from the compositions they pick the Koshka into, and I feel like this is a very, as much as the Koshka is a North American pick at the moment, this is a very European draft to put the Koshka into. So it's not really a draft that enables the Koshka to do what she wants to do, and I feel like in North America, whenever the Koshka comes out, it's in a draft with a someone as a captain that can enable the Koshka, and Lyra doesn't do that quite as well.
It's like when I was in England, we used the same ingredients for our food, but mine was always worse. Like, that's kind of what you're describing. No, but in all seriousness, I mean, I think this is an interesting draft coming out from them. It does seem like a draft where more of the weight is being put on Radha, though. Like, Koshka is an important pick whenever you draft her. She needs to be making the momentum for your team.
Yeah, definitely. I think if you have a weapon Kestrel, then a Koshka might be a good pick to pair with it, because Koshka is going to create chaos. She wants to fight in front of you. A lot of times she's on target. You're going to fight around the edges, hopefully. We'll see. Lyra's going to have to control that area up with a nice bright bulwark. But I do think Lyra does add a bit to what Koshka wants to do. Koshka jumps in, you drop the sigil, let her go to town. This is going to be interesting, though.
All right, quick predictions before we head on to the Halcyon Fold for game number 1 here.
I think both teams have pretty strong drafts, but I got to go with Cyclone.
I think Cyclone, they're number 1 in Europe. The numbers are kind of there. It's Rising Lotus at the bottom. Cyclone, I think, is going to be able to take it.
All right, let's see if they can with Dowsey and Excoundrel.
I love this this little chat about Radha and him stepping up into the team. Like, you look at their play stats so far, and Radha has been on the team in the VG8, playing for the majority of the game. So I love this story of substitute becomes, starting roster. And it's Cyclone. They've just entered the scene, the Scoundrel, and they've really taken over.
Yeah, I mean, Cyclone came from a position where they had a lot of experience. Voldemar obviously had huge experience. He piloted Snow Avalanche previously to knocking Team Secret off the throne last year at the European Summer Lives, I believe it was. If I stand corrected on that, I can't quite remember. But I mean, they've got a lot of pedigree behind them, and they've actually come into this split and looked very, very strong. Interesting to see here, Radha picking up that Koshka again, like we said, been very successful in North America, less successful in Europe thus far. We'll have to see if they make it.
the stats for that is ridiculous. If you look at NA, it's like a 94% win rate, and you look at EU, it's an 84% loss rate. Like, it's the stark opposite.
It's kind of last year you would always describe North America's playstyle as like super aggressive, punish the early game, snowball out of control, make it very difficult for the enemy to get any ground. And you'd always say EU I guess no one really knew how to describe EU's playstyle. It was kind of just, you know, brawl a little bit, sometimes take a structure, a little bit slower pace than America. So Koshka seems to suit what we've always classically thought America were good at.
Fight over this Treant here, and they're looking to get it. It's PT Lamb, though, the target. Lori going straight on in. Radha diving in, but he'll be able to bounce away. Agony chasing deep, and it doesn't look good for Cyclone. As Riding Lotus looking for that first blood, it's going to come for Agony in a second. PT Lamb with 4 to that Achilles shot. Great aggressive play here from Rising Lotus. You know, they haven't been playing with their full roster, their starting roster for the majority of their games. They've now got Hell's Devil back on the captain's position, and it kind of feels like confidence has been reinstated.
Oh, absolutely. They definitely look like they know exactly how to approach this game plan. Looks like Koshka actually going to the backs here to try and at least alleviate some of the pressure. But Agony, he's already got that banner of command. He's going to start to look to put pressure onto Radha. I don't know how Radha can get away potentially here. He just obviously leaps in, uses that blood rush, manages to absolutely get out of dodge, as Tasty Bacon would say. And yeah, I mean, but I like this. It's a super aggressive jungler in the form of the Fortress coming through. You enable the Ringo as well by speeding him up ever so slightly. So yeah, this is a super aggressive composition coming up from Rising Lotus, and you know, very, very good at putting pressure onto the likes of Kestrel. Very, very good at chasing down Koshkas as well. So I really like the way that they are approaching this first game.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's like if anyone's going to be able to keep up with Koshka, it's going to be this Fortress, and not only can he keep up, but he enables his team to keep up as well. So huge ability to chase down. You apply that Agent of Wrath from Hell's Devil, and it's just going to slow down whoever they go for here. Rising Lotus, you have to respect them. They can chase you right down, and if Cyclone gets caught in a position where they don't want to fight, well, Rising Lotus will be able to at least look to try and translate that into a kill.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I personally have never been a huge fan of the weapon Kestrel, but I really do like the Koshka, obviously. I mean, you can't argue with the stats that North America are producing with Koshka. It's absolutely ridiculous. So if Europe can find that same vein of form, you'll be able to see something similar over here. But I've not been a huge fan of the weapon power Kestrel already.
He's just going to get bursted down here. Just completely destroyed, and you know, the weapon Kestrel doesn't have as much stealth time Scoundrel. The active camo isn't as prevalent in the kit, used as more of a CC tool than an escape tool or reposition tool. Now Cyclone, they're forced to try and defend this turret. Rising Lotus looks like they might just back off though.
If I'm completely honest, Darcy, it's not even particularly that. It's that if I were to pick a weapon power carry, I just think that there are better weapon power carries on the table than the Kestrel. Like, Kestrel is good. Like, Kestrel's okay. I much prefer her as CP from the jungle, but she's a decent weapon power carry, but I probably would have picked Gwen over that in this situation. The Skedaddle probably super important at getting through the Verse of Judgment, gives her a little bit of extra movement speed to try and escape away from the Fortress. Got the buckshot to slow down the encroaching team. And obviously I wouldn't be too put too much thought into going for a Vox, for instance, but Vox could have been fine because he could stack up against the Fortress quite easily in the late game. So for me, there were just better potential picks for a weapon power carry from lane.
Yeah, obviously, if Vox was available, it would have been, you know, great, but this is the thing. Gwen is showing prevalence and Cyclone hasn't picked it up. Lori, though, he is trapped. He's way over positioned, and there's just no vision on the board here for Rising Lotus. Cyclone literally able to sneak around the map unspotted. Now that's their laner down, what are they able to translate that into? Cyclone is going to push this turret in. They have that glimmer shot. It is weapon power, so won't do as much damage as the TP version. Oh dear, Waldemar, what happened there? He just got bursted down, and Cyclone, they're trying to turn onto Agony, but there's the fortified health coming forward. They're just turning the fight straight onto Cyclone. A 2 versus 3 going horrifically wrong. Cyclone will be able to escape, but Rising Lotus, wow, all of this forced aggression, and it pays off dividends for them.
A lot of people, Darcy, forget how much fortified health and sort of healing can come out from the Fortress. And in that situation, Radha had already used the majority of his burst, felt that he was going to be able to get the final damage done with just some basic attacks and waiting for his cooldowns to come back up. But my word, Agony really got that health back, really got that fortified health going as well because of the ultimate, and it was a really nice turnaround from Rising Lotus. But again, like you said, the overstep from Voldemar punished very easily by Rising Lotus here, and believe it or not, they've managed to give themselves a 2,000 gold lead very early on into the game against our current #1 in Europe right now. So Rising Lotus finding some form when it counts.
When you talk about synergy, you often look towards that jungle captain positions because they're usually making plays around the map as a unit to try and get those carries ahead in the lane. And the difference between when Hell's Devil was paired with Agony, instead of Rog's World paired, it just seems so huge for Rising Lotus. Like, they've come forward here and they're stepping it to the #1 team in the EU right now. Cyclone, they've definitely had their ups and downs in games. They've never always taken a game win where they've been ahead the entire time. Sometimes it's been a comeback. So there's, not to rule them out of this game whatsoever. They are able to bring themselves back in. But Rising Lotus, they're taking the tempo and they're just throwing it at Cyclone. Cyclone just don't seem to have early game in them.
No, but they do have the potential sort of late game prowess of glimmer shots coming out from the weapon power Kestrel. But again, I still don't think weapon power Kestrel stacks up to weapon power Ringo in the late game. I really don't think they're almost on that kind of level. You really have to be making use of that range advantage. One of the reasons that you pick weapon power Kestrel into a Ringo, by the way, is specifically because the range advantage of glimmer shot is something that you can try and punish him with in lane. I think personally, anyway. In the late game, though, you don't have the things like Twirling Silver, which is a great attack speed steroid. You don't have really much that benefits your weapon power kit hugely, apart from some armor penetration on your ultimate, which is obviously great, the more weapon power you build up. But honestly, I've always been more of a fan of CP Kestrel. We'll have to see how Waldemar pulls it off, though. Really no defensive items here either, so really basically relying on his active camo to do most of the defensive work for him. Or even Lyra to do a lot of it as well, actually.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's going to be... You can see how far he's positioning back. They're going to take this push. They're trying to escape here. It's going to be a split fight as Radha, the one focused down by Rising Lotus, and PT Lamb, he's low. Waldemar will be taken down so easily. One more auto attack does it. Can Agony find the ace? Doesn't look like it. They'll turn head towards this Crystal Sentry, even go for that gold miner straight on afterwards. Just building up such an aggressive lead. And, before the fight broke down, I wanted to make note of the fact that Agony hit a power spike. He's got that Storm Crown. He now has that alternating current, and it just hurts. Yeah,
he's really started to do some damage. The aftershock coming through from the fortress is huge. Absolutely huge. Obviously, this is the 2-item spike for CP Fortress. It generally is. And you say CP Fortress, it's because Fortress is built a CP item, right? But it's more similar to that kind of almost utility glaive build that you sometimes see coming through. But actually on Fortress, you can get a lot of damage out from this particular build path. You've got a good clear of your jungle because of the Storm Crown as well. Your cooldowns are heavily influenced by both the Storm Crown and the aftershock. I mean, you do a lot of work with this particular build. Actually, Ringo just blew up.
Yeah, this is so unlike Cyclone and Rising Lotus. They just feel so comfortable. Hell's Devil continuously being baited out here, but he has the healing. He has Fountain. He can self-heal, and then the Crucible comes out just to provide a bit of extra shielding. And wow, Laurie comes in and he just finishes the job. It's almost unexpected.
This is something that, again, we always talk about how you approach the pace of a team fight. And Koshka is always designed to be a hero that likes to go forwards. Koshka likes to be the one that is being aggressive, doesn't do much peeling, Dowsy. Like we talk about Alpha, Koshka's in that same vein, right? And if you're against a Fortress who's ahead, you will never have the opportunity to be aggressive. You will always be the one that has to be defensive and try and play on the sort of peeling front. It's not really playing to Koshka's strengths. So already, with Rising Lotus managing to be aggressive with this particular composition that they're running, they're already putting Cyclone on the back foot. They're already putting Cyclone into an uncomfortable position in teamfight situations.
And it's only going to become more uncomfortable as that, Ringo starts to scale up, and you mentioned that the Kestrel in the late game might not be able to stack up towards it. Rising Lotus looking to catch out once more. PT Lamb the target here as the Bright Bulwark goes down, but they have Waldemar as well to chase down, so they split their focus. Cyclone trying to get away on all angles, but it's not going to happen. There's Agony finding the kill onto Waldemar. PT Lamb was able to escape just about, but another kill goes their way, and Cyclone not able to do anything about it. Really, it comes down to what Rising Lotus can get from this.
And look at this. It's another build path for the Ringo that has gone down the tornado trigger route. And that's kind of punishing Voldemar more than anything, because he hasn't got any form of armor. They are going up against a double Atlas Pauldrons from PT Lam and Radha, though, so they'll have to be a little bit careful. This does make it slightly harder for you to get that damage output as the Ringo, but this is specifically built to try and punish Voldemar. You get Ringo to that backline of Voldemar, and you blow him up because he's got no armor, and you've got a lot of critical strike in the belt. My issue is that if Koshka gets more tanky and suddenly she becomes a big enough threat, even though she's really only sitting on a shutter glass. I'll talk about that later.
PT Lam is just getting completely bursted down here. Radha's trying to put down the damage to the Atlas Pauldron there, but he walks in and then he has to run away. They're going to find a kill onto PT Lam, and Radha might... No, they don't. The heal comes forward. Actually, this is being turned beautifully by Cyclone. A little bit of aggression from Rising Lotus, and it kind of felt like they wanted to go for everything Scoundrel rather than finishing one job and then moving on to the other.
Yeah, they just weren't getting the last hits there. That was aggressive, but it bought them enough time to be able to go straight for the gold mine. So realistically, they didn't lose any members. They still get a big gold payout from that gold mine. They're not going to be too dissatisfied with the outcome of that scenario. I want to talk about this Koshka build. So she's gone Shatterglass first, which in its own right, against a fairly squishy composition, is perfectly viable. The reason you go Shatterglass is because you want to boost the damage of your abilities outright. You think that you will have enough burst from your abilities to deal with the squishy targets like Ringo, even like Adagio in the backline, right? The problem is it becomes infinitely worse if you don't build on it. It becomes infinitely worse as the game progresses if you don't add anything extra to that particular build. She's gone down a very defensive build path where actually, if you think about the damage over a course of a team fight, Aftershock may actually get more damage in because the cooldown reduction, the max percentage health damage with some stacking health coming out for Hell's Devil and so on and so forth. So there is a slight discrepancy here that when you build Shatterglass, you do need to build something like a Broken Myth to capitalize on it. The fact is that with just one Shatterglass, it's going to become infinitely more useless as the game progresses, and you're seeing Radha really not having a huge damage output at this point in time.
Well, it's not the game for that to happen. It's poor timing as far as, everything that's been said on the analyst desk about how the team has been really impressed with him stepping up in scrim, stepping up to the plate for them, and it's just not being able to find that influence in this game. Definitely poor timing as far as all that is concerned, but right now Rising Lotus, they've eliminated that Crystal Sentry. The enemy jungle of Cyclones is just theirs to waltz through, and now they can start making a little bit more aggressive plays. We've hit that 14-minute mark, a minute until the Kraken comes onto the fold here, and that's going to force a fight around. Cyclone will either let it go, and then it's a fight for the base, or they'll attempt to try and steal it, and that's when Rising Lotus can look to really twist that dagger.
You are seeing a major difference between North America and European playstyles, though. If this was North America, we would have had that choke point turret down, they'd have sieged turrets very quickly, they'd have pushed their advantage. Europe seems so tentative when pushing an advantage, especially the lower end table European teams. They never feel quite sure when and where they can pull the trigger. And that's a major difference between North American and European teams, that Europe are very good at controlling a game, controlling the pace of the game, giving very little away. It's what they do with what they've accrued. And you're seeing from Rising Lotus, they're kind of almost scared to press the advantage. They are spending most of their time just saying neutral objectives in the jungle, get as much of the enemy jungle as possible, and kind of waiting for this Kraken timer to come about so that they can just force a fight around Kraken, with Kraken doing the hard work for them, baiting the enemy team towards them. Just think that's a playstyle that opens yourself up to potential mistakes to be made,
Look at this bush bait from Rising Lotus in that little pixel bush by the tri-bush, and they have full vision of Cyclone coming up, pushing up, looking to try and catch out PT Lam, and PT Lam stepped the boundary, but can they find the kill? It's going to be him going very low, is able to escape. A Radha's in the middle of the fight, not where you want to be, and that's going to be Rising Lotus executing off it. PT Lam, he should fall as well. I don't see him escaping. Waldemar might escape, but it's a lovely little bait there. They don't even take any damage from the Kraken. They allow Cyclone to walk into their dungeon, and now they get the Kraken for free.
We actually saw this from, I believe it was C9 yesterday in the North American VG8, where they built this composition that they needed to win fights around before they could start taking things like turrets off the board. And they got to a point in the game where they didn't feel comfortable sieging a turret without having won a fight, but the enemy team was sat under the turret, so they either had to tower dive or they didn't fight at all. And that was causing issues for Cloud9. So they baited around the Kraken. They waited for Kraken to spawn. They waited for the enemy team to react to them, and then they outright won because the enemy team felt like they had to react to Kraken, which is, is important. You do have to. It looks like Rising Lotus did exactly the same thing. Didn't feel super confident fighting around the turret. Didn't feel super confident forcing the issue around the turret. Here we go, though. It looks like Cyclone are mounting a defense, albeit a very poor one.
Well, they're not committing to anything, are they, Scoundrel? They're trying to do damage to the Kraken, but they understand that that tier 2 turret is not going to survive. Here's PT Lambs, though. Now it's the aggressive play from Cyclone, but they're just getting bursted down immediately. Laurie, he's able to escape. Great Crucible comes through, but will he get away? No, Radha will find the killing blow, but it doesn't matter. Agony and Hell's Devil to clean up house. A double kill for this Fortress, and there's the ace. The base will be under fire. 17 seconds on PT Lamb, and he's not going to do anything. It's Radha with 20 seconds. That's going to be the major one. I would love to see Rising Lotus split there. Focus a little bit, just try and make sure that these turrets get destroyed at the same time. It doesn't really matter though. They're going to go for both of them, and then they're going to look to try and finish this game. Radha, he's respawned. Waldemar as well, but it's not going to be enough here. The underdogs in this series, Rising Lotus from 0 to hero this week 3. They're going to take game 1 over Cyclone.
I just much prefer what Rising Lotus brought to the table here compositionally. Like I said, I'm not a big fan of Weapon Power Kestrel. I think there are just better options. I feel like Gwen would have been a better pick in this situation, a little bit safer, plays from range. You have the disengage potential of a buckshot. It does slow down an encroaching enemy team. And Radha's itemization for me wasn't totally where I would have liked to have seen him go. I understand the reasoning though. I think it's very important to make that distinction, Dalsy. I understand why you'd go Shatterglass first and Koshka. You're supposed to burst. It's more about getting those squishy targets down, relying on your pure scaling of your abilities to do the work for you. But you see throughout that game, just was doing next to nothing for that game.
Yeah, no, something definitely needs to change here. Whether it's play style or its composition, will allow the analysts to decide. The analysts, wow, that just didn't come out right. Save me, AJ, over to you.
Don't worry, Dalsy, I got you. All right, let's do some analysis, shall we? First time's a charm.
Yeah, I feel a little mixed up, as Dalsy is probably. It's a little confusing what we just saw. Cyclone playing like a round of 16 Challenger Series team. Just didn't show up here today. Draft, and okay, all the stuff...